or not signing, excuse me, trading for Geno Smith. And now the question is, what do we do with the 6th pick? Because before, a lot of Raider Nation, before we had really now a quarterback on the roster, we were looking at, could we trade up to get like a Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders? Should we, what are we going to do with the 6th pick? What are we going to do to address the quarterback? And I think all things can be true with this 6th pick. And again, I'm assuming that we don't trade out of it. I'm assuming we're going to stick with this 6th pick because I saw some reporting that suggested that maybe the Raiders swap first-round picks with Seattle to also acquire DK Metcalf additionally. So maybe, but let's just assume that doesn't happen. Let's assume the Raiders don't trade out of the 6th spot. Who would be the best pick for the Raiders at the 6th spot? And who would we pick for quarterback in this draft? Because let's not also be ignorant in the fact that the Raiders still need to address what they're going to do for quarterback for the future. Because again, trading for Geno Smith is just the starter to bridge to the franchise. So who's now going to be the franchise quarterback? Who are we looking at for that? So let me address the 6th pick overall. I think a couple of things would be very, very interesting in this draft if they fall a certain way. Of course, earlier this week, Shedeur Sanders, his character has kind of been called into question by random, anonymous NFL execs and coaches that are more or less sounding a little bit bitter and trying to disparage Shedeur Sanders' character, maybe because they don't like him and the fact that he is making a lot more money than what he would have if he just went in the NFL on a rookie deal. Or maybe they don't like his dad, Deion Sanders, because, he backs up what he says, which is exactly what, the kind of player he is. And I expect Shedeur Sanders to be a player that will back up his play. And so you got some execs and some other people within the NFL, again, remaining anonymous, kind of, taking character shots at Shedeur. And it's now, maybe it takes some teams and it makes them a bit weary of who Shedeur Sanders could be as a player and as a teammate, so on and so forth. So that begs the question then, if Shedeur Sanders falls to number 6 to the Raiders, should the Raiders still draft Shedeur Sanders, even though they just acquired Geno Smith? I would say yes. Here's why. Obviously, everyone knows the connection between Shedeur Sanders and Tom Brady. That's been there for several seasons now about why Shedeur Sanders prepares the way he does, plays the way he does. Also, too, of course, like the fact that Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly could take a player who is not as mobile as Shedeur Sanders, but also who is someone that could stand in the pocket, stay poised, which is something that is needed in this game. And is one in the pocket. And if you have the ability to run or use your legs and stretch the field, or at least tire out the defense with, making plays a bit longer than they should, I think that's great. And a great thing with, if you draft Shedeur Sanders, one, he is somebody that is going to be an exciting player that Raider Nation can get behind and be excited for. And two, you have a quarterback in Geno Smith who has known at his time at Western Virginia, when he was the quarterback there before he was drafted, the controversy around him, or I wouldn't even say controversy, but, the character question, his playing ability. And if everyone remembers, when Geno Smith was drafted, he was projected to be a first-round pick, and then he fell all the way out of the first round into the second round, where he was drafted by the New York Jets, of course. And ever since then, it was a rocky start to his career. So no better player, really, that if Shedeur Sanders were to fall to the Raiders, that Geno Smith could help mentor Shedeur Sanders about what this league is and how do you prepare and how do you stay resilient. Like, that would be a really good mentorship within those two. And then also, again, like, we don't have to rush Shedeur Sanders to be the starting quarterback right away. Pete Carroll, though, is known to have a veteran quarterback that could lead the offense, trade for a or at least draft a quarterback, and then if that quarterback is ready to go, he will start them. Russell Wilson, if everyone remembers, when Pete Carroll took over Seattle, Russell Wilson was a 3rd-round pick. They had just signed Matt Flynn in this offseason after he had, I think, a 6-touchdown game when he was the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. And then during training camp, Russell Wilson just seemed to be getting the offense, seemed to be more exciting when it came to running it and throwing the ball. And before you know it, then you have Russell Wilson, who was named the starter ahead of his rookie season. And ever since then, Russell Wilson was the starter for the Seattle Seahawks. And again, Pete Carroll, if he has to make that decision, he will. And I believe that I would trust Pete Carroll to facilitate like having a Shedeur Sanders and having a Geno Smith and the competitiveness that those two would have and what that could bring to the Raiders when it comes to quarterback competition. And also just understanding that Geno Smith is going to stay prepared as if he's the guy, and Shedeur Sanders is going to strive for that. But there's also no pressure for Shedeur Sanders to start day one. He could very much just be a rookie. See how the speed of the game is. Let's get you familiar with how a playbook runs, how a professional offense looks. Like getting him acclimated to that, giving him time rather than throwing him into the fire if he's not ready. So that's what I think would be interesting if the Raiders do get Shedeur Sanders at number 6. I think that there are some teams that would be willing to draft Shedeur Sanders immediately over the Raiders. Like the Giants are a team that Shedeur Sanders could go to immediately. I would not be surprised if the Cleveland Browns, Tennessee Titans, I wouldn't say the Patriots. I think they're looking for more defense. Who knows what team might also make a trade to get ahead of the Raiders, or maybe the Raiders just trade back. Who knows? But I do think that if Shedeur Sanders does fall to us at 6, that's an interesting pick. But let's assume Shedeur Sanders is off the board and Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders are gone, and now we have the 6th pick. What do we do with it? I think a method that worked well for us last season when we had the 13th pick is we went with best available player. We got Brock Bowers. I think at the 6th pick, with all the other needs that the other 5 teams ahead of us are going to need, they're going to go with defense, they're going to go with quarterback, and Travis Hunter is going to fall somewhere in between that top 5. I couldn't imagine a world where he falls to number 4, in fact. Like, he's going to go within the top 3 picks. Wouldn't be surprised if it was a top 2 pick. Like, it's a realistic expectation or reality of that happening. But with our 6th pick for the Raiders, assuming, again, there's no quarterback that we're willing to take in the first round off the board, I think Ashton Jeanty would be a very good pick because Pete Carroll wants to run the ball. Chip Kelly is going to want to run the ball, and he's going to need a fast offense. He's going to need a fast running back that's big and strong and built to go in between the tackles, break away from the outside. Jeanty had a fantastic year at Boise State where he was also in the conversation of potential Heisman just because of his ability, his running ability, his finesse, his attack to the offensive line in the line of scrimmage. So Ashton Jeanty, to me, would be a solid pick for the Raiders. And again, best available player in terms of athlete, and would help the offense so much, especially with how our offensive line is, how we're going to want to run the ball, get all that movement going, help open things up for Brock Bowers, and help take some pressure off of Geno Smith or whoever the other quarterback is. I think that would be a fantastic pick in Ashton Jeanty, in my opinion.